There is no one size fits all or a simple fix when it comes to your well-being. Hi, my name is Josephine, founder of Positivity Center and Wellbeing Consultant, and a person figuring out how to be my best. So join me in conversation with friends, sharing what works for them, and then listen to what works for others so you can create something that will work for you. Well, hello and welcome to everybody out there. I am your host, Josephine Tite. Welcome to Wellbeing That Works. Today, I am joined by kind of an old friend, actually, from a town I used to live in called Okotoks. Nikki. Nikki, welcome today. I'm so glad to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you. Who's Nikki?
Oh, I'm a lot of things.
I know, right? It's like, what do I get to share about me today? How do you want to show up?
Yeah, how do I want to do this? I think, I'm a mom to 3 wonderful kids, and I've been married now it'll be 15 years this week. So that's always exciting. I'm a nurse, I'm a community support worker. But I think the one thing that I'm most proud of is I live with anxiety and severe depression, and I am a survivor of 2 suicide attempts.
Yeah, so, crazy.
Yeah,
that is quite the introduction. That sounds like I don't know if we can unpack all of that in a 25-minute session, but let's see how we do.
No worries.
Well, maybe there's a part of your well-being that has been defined because of your experience. So maybe you can share a little bit about sort of what well-being means to you because of what you've been through.
Yeah. Well-being has really become something to me that is honoring of myself. Before I went through my mental health crisis 4-5 years ago, I really didn't know who I was. And I was definitely under that label of a people pleaser. I put everyone before myself, and it didn't come until I crumbled and hit my rock bottom and started learning really useful tools that I began to understand myself and have kind of molded into this fantastic version of myself that I didn't even realize I was missing or needed. And now well-being is a priority to myself every day, and that's just listening to my body and being aware of what I need. I also live with chronic illness, so I have to be very mindful of those things. Otherwise I'm out, right? And like I said, I've got 3 kids. We have got a very busy life. So right. And it's also been learning how to set those boundaries and saying no for my own benefit, right?
So you said something, I just want to backtrack just a little bit in your journey there, because I think a lot of people can resonate with, you said 2 things about yourself. You were a people pleaser.
Oh yeah.
Right. How did you know? Like, can you go back to that place where you realized like that was happening? How did you know?
It would be scenarios where people would ask things of me and it didn't matter what I already had going on, or if I felt like doing it or not, I would make it happen. Like, I'm not going to say no to you, because I perceive that as people looking at me negatively, or oh, they don't want to help, or not being a good enough friend or a partner or whatever. There's all that self-judgment and self-labels that came into place.
So am I hearing you kind of say that when you said no, you felt like you weren't being good enough? Because I heard you say not being good enough friend.
It's that whole value system, right? And it comes from a lot of longer exposure, growing up as a kid. But then even in sense of people pleasing, being in a disagreement with someone, choosing not to stand up for myself and just go quiet and bulk everything inside, instead of providing an opportunity for conversation and increased perspectives on both parties.
Yeah, that's huge. So what rewired in you? Like, how did you reframe? Because now I'm guessing that you probably say no sometimes.
Oh, I do.
So how does it not mean what it used to mean before? So how are you good enough when you say no now?
Yeah, I think what really made the difference for me was I got really deep into cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy, where I learned how to challenge my perceived value system and challenge all those negative self-deprecating thoughts and change them into something that I could put some form of stock into. the biggest thing that I still carry with me is, even if you only hold 1%, 10% of value of belief in this reworking, start there. Hold on to that and keep working on it. And eventually that value will grow as you keep working on changing those statements. And then your confidence and your self-esteem all, and your self-value, your self-worth all grow with that. And then learning boundaries and why boundaries are good and why speaking up for yourself in a clear, non-emotionally driven state, because I'm very emotionally minded, emotionally driven, learning how to like get into that wise mind presence, and holding on to that and being able to speak my truth, be able to hear what someone has to say without those emotions percolating up or driving them, and being able to respond and accept their feelings and not taking responsibility myself.
Okay,
I'm not
so
to blame for them.
that's right. Yeah,
feel.
they're in
Their
charge of
feelings
their
are their own
thinking, their
stuff.
feeling. Yeah.
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 I
No,
can't control that.
there has to be a boundary there, because otherwise I know for myself, I've been through times where I just take everything from everybody else's stuff in life onto my own shoulders. Yeah. And it doesn't help me at all.
No, we can't fix everybody.
I kind of, when I look back, it's like getting stuck in empathy is what I would say, which is not a good place to get stuck in. So we got to move from empathy, which empathy is a good thing, but we got to move from empathy to compassion action. If we don't, then we're kind of stuck, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So cognitive behavioral therapy, some people have no idea what that is. I have a little bit of experience in that space. For me, that's like looking at the thought patterns and how they impact behavior and emotions.
Exactly.
But mostly generating it from a thought perspective.
Yeah.
Is it challenging? Is that how you explain it to someone?
Yeah, you pretty much nailed it. It's, looking at our thought perspectives, there's 15 different kinds of thought perspectives. And some, for example, are like catastrophizing or, victimizing or gaslighting, always thinking like the world is coming to an end kind of thought patterns. And it's looking how to identify like kind of what your most often like go-to thought patterns are, and looking at it from a sense of being objective rather than subjective, and looking at things from just the facts, like actually what is going on in this moment, and what are your thoughts saying? Is this actually true? Like checking the facts is one of the terms I use in my programs, is like, let's check the facts. And then from there, okay, what's not true, and what actually should this statement be looking like to a more appropriate perspective of what's going on. And learning how to trap those automatic thoughts and changing them to a more positive view when they're negative. Sometimes we go into certain situations and we're like, oh, I don't want to do this. It's going to be so awful. Like, I have to meet all these new people. No one's going to talk to me, blah, blah, blah. Right. And we start spinning, and it's learning how to stop that spin and be like, no, okay, we're going to go in. Yes, there's going to be new people. Honor your thought, your feeling of, I'm going to be nervous because I feel this way in my body. Right. Yeah. And being able to just like be present with an open mind. And if we can honor our feelings and recognize those thought patterns, they can help mold how we change our behaviors.
So now I'm going to ask you, can you share with us like an example of something that happened to you? Because I don't know if anybody out there is like you and me, but I get stuck in, oh yeah, I know. Like right now I'm listening to a personal power course by Tony Robbins, and we're at the day 4, and it's all about neuroassociations. And if we're going to change behavior, we have to associate it more to pleasure and less to pain, otherwise, or the avoidance of pain, because otherwise we're never going to change our behavior. And so I can see some of that kind of, incorporated into therapies. And actually one of the things he talks about in day 4 is that every therapy works. It all follows, it all is doing that inside our brain. And I'm listening to you talking, I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly what it's doing to you in your brain. It's like, okay, this might be a nerve-wracking situation, and I'm going to meet new people, and I might like make a really long-lasting connection. And so those are the pleasure-seeking things that you think about, right? To help associate that event neurologically to something good for you, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So maybe you could share with us, an example of something that's, happened in your personal life, or even, something that you've coached somebody else through, but just to help it really hit home for people, right? Like, what does that look like in real life?
So I think my best example is, before I kind of really started embracing this new version of myself, as I said, I'm very emotionally driven. So a minor disagreement or difference of opinion between my husband and myself, I would just kind of like flip my lid and all the emotions would take over. And, I would be angry and yelling and whatever. Like I would be, it'd come across as being so offended, right? But I was like, he's attacking me. That's how I perceived it, right? So there's those negative thoughts that are going, he's attacking, he's attacking, he's attacking. My behavior is to yell and walk away and not want to address the conflict, making things really worse than what they really ever needed to be, and not wanting to communicate. I shut down. So going through and learning these techniques about our thoughts, behaviors, and emotions, I began to do that objective process of like, okay, he is saying this, say it's like, oh, the kitchen's not cleaned up, to like how he would do it. Okay, he has his own way of doing things and I have my way of doing things, right? And that's okay. We might have a difference of opinion. That's okay. He's just expressing how he thinks and feels. And I'm going to have my emotional reaction to it and the thoughts that are going. So I start thinking, I don't do things good enough. This feels like, when I was growing up doing chores as a kid, and I just feel so awful about myself. And then it's learning, whoa, stop. That's not what he's doing. He's just communicating his experience, his way that he does things, and that's okay, right? Like you just need to communicate what that's doing for you in the moment, right? And then it's, it helps bring down those emotions and then changes my behavior to where I can sit there and be like, okay, well, I'm feeling really vulnerable or, triggered in the sense that this reminds me of when, and, I realize that that's not your intention. And I'm doing my best to just kind of like manage my emotions in the moment so they don't take over. And being able to negotiate in a give and take kind of way and address the conflict and not have it blow up. And that was never something I could do before. I can handle those perceived tough conversations with ease. And the weird thing is, the more difficult the conversation, the better I feel about it. I'm like, yeah, I tackled that. Whoa, go me.
You like a challenge. Yeah, obviously.
Like, yes.
Okay, so when I'm hearing you talk too, like I also hear, especially when you said like that moment where you're like, hey, stop.
Yeah.
So what tools did you use to help you get to that place where you could actually see what was really going on and say to yourself, hey, like snap out of it. Something else is going on here. And it's not just all about you and how frustrated you are and how attacked you feel.
Exactly. So in dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, part of the distress tolerance series, which
explain that too. Kind of give us a little lowdown of the definition of that.
Yeah. So dialectical behavioral therapy is, merging the thoughts and the talk with the behaviors. Like it all kind of brings everything together. So giving you the tools to help also change your thought patterns, how to get through really intense emotional situations or dealing with intense pain, distress tolerance, learning mindfulness and that wise mind state, which is like your Yoda of your rational mind and your emotional mind bridged together. So it's basically your skills. It's a ton of skills. And I think my biggest thing that I kind of use in this thought process is the STOP acronym.
Okay.
It works perfectly.
Yeah,
so you just think to yourself, stop. So S is literally stop. Like stop what you're doing, take a step back, right? And then T is take a breath, right? Just take that moment to pause, whether you're physically removing yourself from the situation for a second and saying like 2 seconds, I just need a minute, or just literally just taking a nice deep breath in that moment. O is to observe mindfully, right? So it's checking the facts, putting yourself presently back in that moment and looking at things from an objective perspective, taking away the labels, taking away the judgments. Look at things as what they truly are in their purest sense. And then proceeding mindfully, proceeding mindfully, right? In a way that honors what your needs are and what you need to say in a very mindful approach, and then also honors what the other person is needing to contribute to the conversation.
I actually, as you're describing that, I kind of started taking myself through those steps right now here with you, because you're explaining that process in sort of, you know, let's say a negative circumstance, because the one thing you did describe was, you know, fighting with your husband over the state of the kitchen, which is totally common. Except for me, it's in my house, it's flipped. I'm like, hello, the kitchen isn't done to my standards. I've had to let go too, because I also get that it's not what they value, right? I value it at a different standard, a different level, or whatever. It means more to me, right? So it's the meaning making I have behind it. But this STOP acronym would be helpful also in a really positive situation.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm just thinking like, okay, I'm stopping, I'm breathing, I'm just watching you, and like, just be you. And I'm just like, this is a beautiful thing. So it can also help to, you know, I guess, increase the positive emotions. And for me, that's doing those steps. For me, it felt like savoring. So
absolutely.
It was kind of like, I'm adding this to my savoring repertoire of moments that kind of I'll always remember and treasure without having like a photograph, or, well, I'll have the show. That'll be great. But, you know, without that, you know, virtual recording of it, it's like, hey, I can make that last longer.
Absolutely.
So do you see that too? Because
I do. Yeah. Because
and
one of the
you ever
big
used
things,
it in that way?
Yeah. One of the big things that are really that I learned was just exactly the ending is being present in the moment. That's really a big part of mindfulness and DBT therapy, is really learning how to be present in the moment and let go of all of our thoughts, clear our mind, and just be. Like, whether you're, say, at a wedding or something, at the reception, and everyone's dancing and you're sitting there and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to dance. Oh my God. No, get up, go dance. Who cares? Let it fly, right? It's like just not having those worries and just being. Just being.
So in some ways you're letting go of judging others, you know, because you've previously looked at others as whatever their actions were doing or their thoughts or whatever, you were taking it personally. And then you're almost doing that for yourself too, because you're then letting go of the judgment on you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so healing. It's so healing.
So it's a reciprocating.
It's okay.
Sorry, what was the last thing you said?
I was just saying it's okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's you know, when I'm working with the kids, the biggest thing I share to them, because I always ask them, like, you know, can emotions be good or bad? And they always say yes. And I always tell them, actually, it's a no. Your emotions aren't good or bad. They just are.
Yeah.
Emotions can't be good or bad. And I think a lot of us still put that label on emotions. But when you really dig at it, it's the behaviors, not the emotions, because 9 times out of 10, the emotions are actually hiding something much deeper.
So key. So why don't you share a little bit about what's happened with you as you've learned, you know, all these tools and ways of thinking and being and feeling, and how it's translated into your Wise Kids program.
Yeah. So as I was going through my journey, I kept saying to myself, like, wow, I wish I had these tools when I was a kid. I would have understood myself and the world around me so much better. And that actually prompted me to go back to school. And during COVID, I got my community support worker diploma, and got kind of more in depth with all the therapies and stuff, and really started to connect with my drive to give back to my community, and especially the children within the community. So as part of my practicum, I actually, because we couldn't go into a physical place, we did kind of like an online practicum and case studies and stuff. And part of it was to create this psychoeducational program for whoever we wanted to. And so I took that as my sign. Okay, I want to work with kids. Let's make something work for kids. I want kids to know what I know and wish I had. And that's where Wise Kids came from. So it's actually my practicum project which my awesome instructor, really kind of got behind me and gave me the motivation and courage to like take it to the next step. So originally Wise Kids was targeted for kids age 7 to 12, and we learn things about emotional regulation, and we work on increasing our emotional vocabulary. We learn about self-talk. We learn about mindfulness. We learn about our thoughts, our behaviors, and our emotions. I call them my bet triangle because I have my kitschy little saying, when you use your bet triangle, you can bet on your thoughts getting better.
Nice.
Right? Yeah, and then we go through a whole slew of coping skills. We practice them, and at the end, we make our own toolbox. And the kids bring a box, and they can create it however they want to represent whatever they want. And at the end, they get a whole bunch of like handouts and things that I have for them. Plus, they can throw in the own things that they found that help them get through really tough times, or major emotions. And they always have this go-to. And it's been really awesome. And from there now, I've also included young learners and a teens edition. So the young learners, we kind of just start at the basics. Those are like our pre-K kids to kind of grade 1, kindergarten, grade 1. And we just start at the basics. I want you to learn what emotions are. Let's be a detective. How do we recognize them in other people? Right? And then how do we be a good friend? Right? And most importantly, how do we be a good friend to ourselves? Right? And just honoring those, and we play fun games and songs and just have a really great time. And, parents can be involved in these sessions with these little ones because, let's be honest, online's not going to work for them. So we try and do more in person with those ones. And then the teens edition is basically compounds everything and just digs a bit more deeper. We go more into communication and negotiation and conflict resolution and boundaries and healthy relationships, all these kind of keys that can set you up so that as you go into your adult years and through the rest of your teen years, you've got these skills that can help you manage your really stressful times, to make them not feel so intense, and be able to manage a lot better.
And my guess is it's not a one and done, right? You don't just
take not a one and done. No,
you gotta keep practicing, right?
Yeah, well, that's the key of a skill, right? In order to gain mastery of a skill, you got to keep practicing it, right? And even if you only achieve 1 second success with one skill, that's okay. You got a second. Okay, tomorrow let's try for 2. Right? And it's being patient with yourself, keeping working with them. Things can totally get better. And the other great thing about it is I actually incorporate parents with all the programs. So
you need to. I don't know how we can actually do that without incorporating, because if you think about it, if you shift the mindset of a child, and then they go back home and that mindset shift isn't supported, well, you're like fighting, like that's going to require even more practice. And who knows if they've got the willpower, the determination, and the perseverance to do that.
Exactly.
It makes it harder.
It does. So with every session in the program, I always send home kind of like relatable material to our topic of the day for the parents, so they can kind of get a little intro into what we're learning, in ways that they can support their child till next session and things. And then at the end of all the sessions, I hold a parents' night. So parents can come in, we cover all the topics, they can ask their questions, I teach them some of the skills. And, I'm kind of after that, it's like, if you need anything, I'm here. There's always that connection for us. If your child needs support, cool, reach out, like we can schedule something. Don't worry,
And so now what's one of the things that I feel like asking you is, I'm hearing you give a lot. And and some of me hears you kind of giving to that, even though I didn't know her, but that little girl, Nikki.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And how do you manage the giving now versus the giving where it used to be, where you called yourself a people pleaser? What's the difference now? And how do you maintain the boundary to just, it's never a perfect balance. I think you're always kind of moving in here, but what do you do to sort of help maintain your well-being and all of that you're giving?
Yeah, for me, doing the sessions, yes, it kind of honors that inner child and helps that healing process continue on. It also gives me the ability to keep working on my skills because I practice what I preach,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's super important. But outside of that, I do things that like, I make sure to do things that bring me enjoyment. And, you know, right now, Wise Kids is so important to me. And it's kind of, it's my passion project, right? Like, I don't know that how often people can say, I'm doing what I truly love as my career. And I'm really excited to see where this can go. And don't get me wrong, it's been stressful. And I've beaten myself up on days and said, man, I really need to finish working on this program because I'm approaching a deadline. But it's like, you know what? I'm tired and my body aches and I need to just let it be. Like, I'll get it done because if I don't do this, it's only going to delay everything more. And I've just learned to stand up for myself internally more than anything. Like, I don't need to validate my reasoning for anyone in my family. They get it, right? And they're always right there for me as my support. But it's more for my own self and standing up for myself and saying, it's okay. We just need to stop. And the one thing I appreciate the most is when I'm kind of low on my resilience to say, whoa, stop, it's okay. My husband's right there and he's like, don't worry. He's like, this is what's important in the moment. You'll get there. And I'm like, you're right. Thank you.
Yeah, we need those reminders.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know, we're not perfect and things will happen and that's okay. And, you know, whether it's a self reminder or a reminder from a loved one, that's totally okay. It's okay to accept help. And that's the other thing I learned too.
Thanks for listening to Wellbeing That Works. Before you go, take 1 minute to write down your takeaway from today's guest. And be sure to download our Wellbeing Evaluation Sheet to help you along your wellbeing journey. And if you've got something to share to inspire others, be sure to be a guest on our show. Until next time, with love and kindness.